Apparently the 100th anniversary, the opening day of the Fort Garry 100 years ago next year, 1913, was an auspicious occasion. Mel was there. So it was a great event. And next year as well, 2013, in this room on September the 24th, 1963, was the formation of the union, the merger of two unions, 60,000 members that first day. And the president of the CLC spoke saying it was not a merger made in heaven at all. It took 4 years of negotiation between two affiliates. And the president of the CLC said that day, "I think this could be the beginnings of a great home for public employees." And since September 24th, 1963, the union has grown at the rate of 950 members a month for the last 50 years, and today has 625,000 members, born right here in this room 50 years ago. And I'm very proud of that. Very proud as well to be here today at the request of Shirley Lord and Jim and others from CCPA Manitoba. And there's two reasons we gathered today. Number one is to support the establishment of the CCPA Manitoba Errol Black Chair in Labor Studies. And two, to express collectively to Errol and his family our love and admiration for him, and to say thank you, brother, for your strong voice, for your advocacy, and for making a difference to our community here in Manitoba. I think maybe Nelson Mandela said it best: education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. And that's been the hallmark of Errol and Jim and many others, and more latterly in the last number of years at CCPA Manitoba. And they got accolades just a week ago. Sean McKinnon shared with me a fellow named Ian Johnson, a trade unionist from Halifax, wrote CCPA to thank Jim and Errol for their August article on anti-union labor legislation in the United States making its way into Canada. Lynn Fernandez from CCPA sent me an email just reflecting upon Errol and his career, and I think her words capture it very well. Errol, the greatest lesson he has taught Lynn is how to not be bamboozled by the seemingly clever arguments from those on the right. Errol has the ability to cut through numbers, outright lies, half-truths, and rhetoric. He's brave, dedicated, and principled. He's naturally charming, but tough as nails when need be. He battles with ideas, not with people. It's impossible not to respect him, regardless of your point of view. Errol has for decades used this powerful weapon of education to push the boundaries of debate and critical thought in Manitoba. Through his academic career, 32 years at Brandon University, through his 12 years in elected office as a councillor at Brandon City Council, his trade union activism. Jan Chaboyer writes me that since the mid-1970s, at every single Brandon Labour Council meeting, the author of most resolutions, most letters sent on behalf of the Labour Council, and on every single picket line in the Brandon community since the mid-1970s. Through his membership in the NDP and his activism as a candidate, as a voice on the floor of conventions, and as a constant supporter of our party, the NDP. And through, more latterly, his writings, including CCPA Manitoba work. Errol, in black and white, I saw copies when we walked in, is an incredible compilation of persuasive and a consistently credible voice on the left. And let me pause to salute Jim Silver, Sean McKinnon, Lynn Fernandez, Todd Scarf, Robert Chernomas, and of course, Errol Black, the heart and soul of CCPA Manitoba. Pound for pound, in my view, Canada's most prolific and outstanding research collective. They deserve both our sincere thanks and our financial backing for the outstanding work they've done for over a decade. Congratulations. in black and white only shows a few of the articles that Errol has written, and I'll speak about a couple of those in a moment, but I asked for a little more information on Errol's background. So he emailed me a couple of weeks ago and said he'd prefer to send it by snail mail. There's a lot. So I got home last night at 7:30 and there's a very thick package. And in there is Errol's application in 1995 for a full professorship at Brandon University, which was, of course, successful. So this is Errol up until 1995. Authored or co-authored 6 books, 96 articles and book reviews, and these are the published letters to the editor. I don't know what your success rate is, Errol, but this is about a fraction of them. 324 letters to the editor published in Brandon, Manitoba, and nationally up until 1995. What were the subjects? Just a smattering. Guaranteed annual income, Chile, the GST, the Free Trade Agreement, Eaton's workers organizing in Brandon, the UIC, Pocklington and Gainers, Mulroney, Meech Lake, countless issues month in and month out over decades up until 1995 and many since then. In black and white, the writings between 2002 and 2011 at the CCPA Manitoba collectively capture a stunning diversity of policy and critical thought. And what's striking for me in reading on an airplane in the last couple of weeks, the entire book, cover to cover, is the sheer clarity of thought and how ahead of the curve Errol and CCPA Manitoba have been. Some examples. August 2012, the threat of right-to-work laws and the need for social solidarity. Errol and Jim chart the looming attack on the labor movement by Harper, by Brad Wall, by the McGuinty government of all people, and the government in waiting in their own minds, the Conservatives in Ontario. How the stakes are high for all who value social programs and worker rights. And I suspect they are correct in predicting the movement towards some form of right-to-work laws here in Canada. They argue persuasively, this is a theme throughout Errol's writings, most latterly in August of this year, where he says, along with Jim, they argue for education of workers, saying they won't learn this from newspaper, TV news, or other forms of mainstream media. They will only learn about the challenge unions face when unions themselves carry out an intensive education campaign. How true and how badly we need CCPA Manitoba and a more informed citizenry, period. In February 2002, here's Errol writing about agricultural workers as second-class citizens being denied basic worker protections. He was arguing in Manitoba and in Canada. Fast forward to today, temporary foreign workers under Mr. Harper, expanding their numbers, legalizing paying them 15% less than the going rates, and giving employers a tighter grip on Canada's immigration system. All of the warnings from the 2002 article not heeded by Mr. Harper. Here's an incredible article from June of 2008. Errol talking about the gift of life on the occasion of his 100th donation of blood. Errol has a rare blood type, and for years has donated his blood, and they honored him on the occasion of his 100th donation. Here's how he talked about that in CCPA. It's a system, the blood donor, citizens donating their blood for use by other citizens. It's a system that promotes altruistic as opposed to self-interested behavior. And it's a system that nurtures solidarity and community. The promotion of solidarity and community are the hallmarks of each and every one of the articles that Errol has written for CCPA Manitoba. Countless articles and submissions on the provincial minimum wage. Errol was sitting and chatting with our premier while Jim was talking. They were just writing notes on paper, and I saw one of Errol's, he's still working during this brunch here today. Mr. Premier, it's time you index the minimum wage so there's annual increases. And I won't give you the response. and Errol in the summer of 2011, just over a year ago, just a month and a half ahead of the Occupy Wall Street movement that kind of enveloped much of the world at that time. Here's what they said in the pages of CCPA. The self-interest of the powerful few has pushed aside reason. Their political forces have run roughshod over those who would build a more egalitarian and socially just society. Their policies will drive us even more rapidly towards economic crisis. The only thing that will change this situation is ongoing demonstrations of outrage by Canadians who care about the future of this country. This needs to start now. So here they were 6 weeks in front of the Occupy Wall Street movement, and all I can say to you, Jim, and Errol, is that this crowd and millions of others care passionately about Canada becoming less socially just, less egalitarian, and we believe our country is worth fighting for. Your words serve to motivate. Articles on equalization, Manitoba Hydro's Bipole 3, federal stimulus measures, Manitoba's balanced budget legislation, poverty, housing, the folly of tax cuts as stimulus measures, and labor history, a constant of Errol's career, not just his time at CCPA, but over 3 decades of writing, has been about labor history. One of the published articles in the book, the side table, 2008, Jan Chaboyer, president of the Brandon District Labor Council, and Errol. The article is entitled, Conspiracy in Winnipeg, How the 1919 General Strike Leaders Were Railroaded into Prison and What We Must Do to Make Amends. And they revealed, Tom Mitchell, another employee at Brandon University, did a lot of research on this. They revealed that the strike leaders' trials in Winnipeg were a private prosecution by the right wing in Winnipeg, funded by the federal government from funds that had been set aside to resettle World War I veterans. One of the first times that came out was in 2008. Interestingly, they oppose, Errol and Jan oppose Labour launching a drive to secure pardons for this travesty of justice some 90 years later. They argued instead, 1919 provides a fundamental terrain of instruction for students of the ongoing relations between capital, labor, and the state in Canadian society. How right they were, in my view, to preserve this teaching moment. And on reflection, I think the 1919 strike leaders would embrace this thought. They do not, and they did not need to be forgiven by the state. 3 of them were elected to the Manitoba legislation from their prison cells. They were never guilty in the eyes of the people of Manitoba. It's always struck me that the citizens of this city in 1919 knew much better than perhaps today what class they belonged to and who they could trust. And 93 years later, Errol and others constantly are challenging us to reestablish such working class consciousness here in our community, and he's right, along with the collective at CCPA Manitoba, to push us in these directions. Another article, unfortunately correct, in 2006, Errol, with Wayne Anthony and Dennis Lewicki, who's here today, writing about the privatization bias at Winnipeg City Hall with the then 2-year mayor, Sam Cates, talking about garbage collection, being in the news. And perhaps we might urge you, Errol, to continue your reflections upon Winnipeg civic politics under Sam Cates. Garbage collection, land deals, private dealings with senior city staff, conflict of interest, all honor absent, and the modus operandi seems to be catch me if you can. I'm reading Joseph Stiglitz right now, his new book, The Price of Inequality. It's a fabulous book. He talks near the beginning of it of the degradation of values to the point where everything is acceptable and no one is accountable in politics today. And I have to say, as a 3rd-generation Winnipegger, I think many would share my view that Winnipeg City Hall is presided over by a morally repugnant leader. one who does not know right from wrong, and one who must be tossed from office in 2014. I asked Errol if I could use the phrase morally repugnant, and he said by all means. Errol, I want to thank you for making a difference, for pushing the boundaries of social justice and community. Your speaking truth to power over so many years has made a difference. And I read another article recently. We had this fellow up from the United States speaking to QP communication staff, George Lakoff. And he's called on all progressives to reclaim the agenda from the right by education and by our voices not being kept silent. And it struck me that what Lakoff is talking about personifies what Errol Black has meant to our community over so many decades. Lakoff says, challenging all of us, start telling deep truths out loud all day, every day. Democracy is about citizens caring about each other. The public is necessary for the private. Unions protect workers from corporate exploitation. Public schools are essential to opportunity. They are also essential to democracy, since democracy requires an educated citizenry. Without education of the public, there can be no freedom. He closes by saying the conservative goal is to impose rule by conservative morality on the entire country and beyond. Eliminating unions and public education are just steps along the way. Only progressive moral force can stop them. Errol, you have and you continue to be an important progressive and moral force for our community here in Manitoba. The greatest tribute we can pay to you is to commit ourselves to the pursuit of social justice and equality, to being active and engaged and informed citizens. We do so today, and we thank you, brother, for living the principles that we aspire to. And I ask you, all of you, sisters and brothers, join me in saluting our friend and our brother, Errol Black. Thank you.